So what changes would we see with Linda McMahon as the Secretary of Education? Republican Representative Erin Houchin is a member of the House Education and Workforce Committee. She weighs in on Trump's pick. Congresswoman Erin Houchin, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back.
Thanks.
I want to get your thoughts on Department of Education. President-elect Trump nominating Linda McMahon to head that department. What are your thoughts?
I'm excited to see Linda McMahon take on this role. She's an accomplished businesswoman. I think she's going to bring a unique perspective to the department. What I would say too is that President Trump is making his selections based on who he trusts to do the work that is necessary, and the Department of Education needs a lot of help. We've seen the disastrous FAFSA rollout from last year, prompting our legislation, the FAFSA Deadline Act, which just passed the House with unanimous support. So I'm looking forward to what she'll bring and how we can streamline and modernize the Department of Education.
Just how far behind would you say the Department of Education has been? I think a lot of people see the headline, Trump is going to gut the Department of Education, and of course certain institutions have names with lofty weight. But talk to us about the challenges this department has faced.
Well, they've faced numerous challenges. 3 years ago, Congress instituted the FAFSA Simplification Act, asking the department to simplify the FAFSA, and it turned out to be a complete disaster. The Biden Department of Education spent more time on student loan bailouts than actually doing what Congress directed with the FAFSA Simplification Act. In October, when they were supposed to meet the deadline, they kicked it to December, they kicked it to January. When parents started calling, 75% of those calls went unanswered to the Department of Education when parents were trying to complete this form. That's 4 million calls that they didn't answer. When they did answer the phone, they told parents just to keep trying. So it's been a complete disaster, just like every other agency under Joe Biden. I'm looking forward to President Trump getting back into office and under Linda McMahon's leadership, making it work again. What I would say, too, is that the Department of Education worked fine under the previous Trump administration. It's only been since Joe Biden took office that things have really had a breakdown, and so he'll have Linda get in there and turn things around, I have no doubt.
So what you're saying ultimately is no cause for concern for parents who hear that there might be major changes to the Department of Education. And I guess with that said, what type of changes would you like to see or do you expect to see from Linda McMahon?
Well, I would say that, the Department of Education federally, it really should be up to the states. So when you hear Republicans talking about revamping the Department of Education, you might see things like block granting funds to the states or just returning K-12 education in particular back to the states and take it out of the federal government. The federal government really doesn't have a strong place for a Department of Education. There are certain things like student loans, some programs that they might decide to keep. When President Trump is talking about doing this type of work and Republicans on the Hill, what we really mean is let's take a look at it. Let's return to the states what can be returned to the states. Let's de-bureaucratize, take away the DC bureaucrats, put parents back in charge of education, and really modernize and streamline the Department of Education for maximum efficiency and the Federalist principles of the states know best.
You do sit on the Committee for Education in the House of Representatives. What are some of the initiatives and things that you guys have been focusing on over the past 2 years?
Well, college cost reduction is something that we've been working on, trying to make college more affordable for American families. We've been doing the Workforce Pell Grant, workforce savings accounts for workforce-type career and technical education. I have the FAFSA Deadline Act, which is to hold the department to a firm deadline. And unique to me is the trying to define dyslexia as a reading disability in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, so that teachers and students and families across the country understand what it means to have that dyslexia diagnosis, and we don't have children fall through the cracks. 1 in 5 Americans have this reading disability, and we are not teaching kids to read in the way that they learn best. And I'm on a mission to change it.
Lastly, if I could just get your thoughts, the illegal immigrant who killed Laken Riley was found guilty and sentenced yesterday. What are your thoughts on the illegal immigration situation, and what do you hope to see in the next administration?
Well, I'm excited that we have the trifecta with President Trump and the Senate and the House. The terrible circumstance that never should have happened. Laken Riley never should have been put in that situation. Unfortunately, under the Biden administration, letting millions of illegal immigrants into the country unvetted into the interior of the United States with just a court date, and then even when they've committed additional crimes, not deporting them. This is on Joe Biden, unfortunately, and I grieve for her family. I'm glad he was held accountable, but it never should have happened in the first place. Republicans passed H.R. 2 very early on. President Trump can do a lot by executive order on day one. I look forward to finally securing the border, because this is what the mandate was from the American people on Election Day.
Congresswoman Erin Houchin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And President-elect Trump has a new nomination for Attorney General, Pam Bondi. She's former AG for Florida, who also served in Trump's first administration on his drug abuse commission. Trump says, quote, Pam will refocus the Department of Justice to its intended purpose of fighting crime. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz withdrew from consideration as Attorney General earlier today. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao brings us more on that from West Palm Beach.
President-elect Trump on Thursday announcing that he's now choosing Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of Florida, to be his new pick for U.S. Attorney General. In a statement, Trump praises Bondi's experience as a prosecutor for nearly 20 years and a record of being, quote, tough on violent criminals. Trump asked that the Department of Justice has been weaponized against me and other Republicans. Not anymore. Pam will refocus the DOJ to its intended purpose of fighting crime and making America safe again. In a surprising turn, former Congressman Matt Gaetz announces withdrawing his bid to be the Attorney General in President-elect Trump's incoming administration. In a statement, Gaetz says, while the momentum was strong, it is clear that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition, adding that there's no time to waste on a needlessly protracted Washington scuffle. President-elect Trump also responding, saying on Truth Social minutes after that Gaetz was doing very well, but at the same time did not want to be a distraction, adding that Matt has a wonderful future. The announcement comes after Gaetz on Wednesday held meetings with senators on the Hill. It also comes as Republicans on the House Ethics Committee on Wednesday voted not to release its report on investigations into sexual misconduct allegations against Gaetz. And more administration picks by Trump are expected to make rounds on Capitol Hill in the coming weeks to gauge and increase their chances of getting confirmed. Reporting from West Palm Beach, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And breaking just moments ago, Democratic Senator Bob Casey has just conceded the Pennsylvania Senate race to Republican Dave McCormick. This ends an automatic recount triggered by the race. Now that the final tally is in, the race was decided by less than a quarter percentage point. The director of the FBI and the DHS secretary declining to testify in today's Senate hearing on ongoing threats to national security. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are expressing concern over the lack of transparency of the executive branch. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez joins us from Capitol Hill with more on this story.
Democratic Senator Gary Peters, the chairman of the Senate's Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, was forced to postpone this Thursday's annual hearing on threats to the homeland. In a statement, Chairman Peters denounced that the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security's choice to not provide public testimony robs the American people of critical information and the opportunity for public accountability of what the federal government is doing to keep Americans safe. This is the first time since the beginning of these hearings 15 years ago that the executive branch refuses to publicly testify. House Republicans are concerned at Americans' inability to see Congress provide oversight over what the federal government is doing. Should Americans be worried about the current?
Should always be worried. We have a wide open border. Thank God they elected Donald Trump. He will close the border. That's one of our greatest security risks. Internationally, the world is in crisis, right? Because we've had a weak, feckless leader.
I think we all should be concerned. I mean, if you're asked and compelled, if you're asked to come before Congress or the Senate or the House to testify, you should show up. That's like the bare minimum of doing your job. But we've got, a new sheriff in town. We'll have a new administration here in a few weeks to clean house, literally.
The Senate's version and the House's version of the hearing titled Threats to the Homeland have been postponed. And it's worth noting that it's Democratic Senator Gary Peters, the chairman of the Senate's Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, the one insisting that these hearings remain public.
Gary has talked to me too, and he is very adamant that there be some part open, and we're going to do that. Just when we can get a classified setting for the level of classification that Mayorkas says he's supposed to tell us some stuff on. So as soon as we can get that done, we'll do it.
These week's postponed hearings were scheduled just as President-elect Donald Trump is considering who will be his new FBI director and has also tapped South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem to replace Alejandro Mayorkas at the helm of the Department of Homeland Security. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And just in today, the International Criminal Court issuing arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister on grounds of alleged crimes against humanity. The court also issuing a similar warrant for a Hamas terrorist leader that Israel says they killed. The White House says that the U.S. fundamentally rejects the court's warrants against senior Israeli officials. And NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more on this story.
The International Criminal Court in The Hague has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister Yoav Gallant for alleged war crimes and alleged crimes against humanity. They also issued another arrest warrant for Hamas leader Mohammed Daib Ibrahim al-Masri, also known as Mohammed Daif, on the same grounds. Both Israeli leaders and the terrorist group Hamas have dismissed allegations that they committed war crimes. The ICC judges said there were reasonable grounds to believe Netanyahu and Gallant were criminally responsible for starvation in Gaza and the persecution of Palestinians. Netanyahu's office responded in a statement saying, Israel utterly rejects the false and absurd charges of the International Criminal Court, adding that no anti-Israel decision will prevent the State of Israel from defending its citizens. The warrant for Hamas's al-Masri lists charges of mass killings during the October 7th attacks on Israel that triggered the Gaza war. It also includes charges of rape and the taking of hostages. Israel has said it killed Masri in an airstrike in July, but Hamas has neither confirmed nor denied this. The prosecution indicated it would continue to gather information with respect to his reported death. Israeli President Isaac Herzog said the court chose to side with terrorism and evil over democracy and freedom, and turned the international justice system into a human shield for Hamas's crimes against humanity. In an official statement, Hamas called on the ICC to expand accountability to all Israeli leaders. A White House National Security Council spokesperson said the US rejects the court's warrants for senior Israeli officials, adding the US is discussing next steps with partners. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said the warrants are not political.
It is a decision of a court of justice, of the International Court of Justice. And the decision of the court has to be respected and implemented.
Meanwhile, in the United States, Senator Lindsey Graham said the court is a dangerous joke and called on the Senate to sanction the, quote, irresponsible body. Since the ICC does not have its own police force, it is now up to its 124 member states to see if they want to enforce the warrants. Israel and the United States are not members, while the European Union, Britain, Japan and the Middle Eastern nation Jordan are. Now, if the member nations don't want to enforce the warrants, they could face sanctions by the court, but this would realistically amount to little more than a diplomatic slap on the wrist. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.